Yet in this claustrophobic passageway, he is utterly alone with his predators. He pauses, wiping sweat from his brow. Turning to a soldier he has mocked 1,000 times, preparing to deliver one last insult. He opens his mouth to speak, expecting the usual submissive silence, but instead, he hears the rasp of a gladius being drawn from its scabbard. The metal hisses. The soldier screams a single phrase that will echo through history. "Take this." And then, the blade drives upward. This is not just a murder. It is an exorcism. But to understand why 24 hours of butchery were necessary to cleanse the empire, we cannot start at the end. We must go back to the beginning, to a time before the madness, before the terror, when the monster was nothing more than a child wearing a costume. The year is 14 AD. We are standing on the muddy banks of the Rhine River, surrounded by the iron and leather of the Roman legions. The wind here is bitter, carrying the scent of pine forests and unwashed men. But amidst the grim reality of war, there is laughter. A little boy, no older than 2 or 3, is sprinting through the camp. He is dressed in a miniature version of a soldier's uniform, a tiny breastplate, a small sword, and most famously, little soldiers' boots. The battle-hardened legionnaires, men who have slaughtered barbarians and conquered provinces. Look at this child with tears of adoration in their eyes. They call him Caligula, Little Boots. He is the son of Germanicus, the most beloved general since Julius Caesar, a man who represents everything Rome aspires to be, honorable, brave, and just. To these soldiers, the boy is a mascot, a living talisman of victory. Young Caligula falls asleep every night to the sound of marching songs and the clatter of armor, believing that the world is a safe place, that he is invincible, and that the love of the army will protect him forever. He has no way of knowing that the armor he wears is merely a costume, and the safety he feels is a lie. The tragedy begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. 1 year later, the invincible Germanicus falls ill in Antioch. His skin turns black. Foam flecks his lips. The official reports claim sudden illness, but the rumors swirling to the forums and bathhouses of Rome speak of a darker truth. Poison. It is said that the order came from the highest level, perhaps even from Emperor Tiberius himself, a man consumed by jealousy of Germanicus's popularity. Caligula is only 7 years old when the golden light of his childhood is extinguished forever. Now, the true education of the future emperor begins, and his classroom is a dungeon. Over the next few years, the boy watches in paralyzed silence as the imperial machine systematically devours his family. He sees his mother, Agrippina the Elder, a woman of iron dignity, dragged from their home, accused of treason, and exiled to a barren island where she will eventually starve to death. He watches his oldest brother arrested and thrown into a cell so dark and hopeless that, in his delirium of hunger, he attempts to eat the stuffing from his own mattress. He hears of his second brother, exiled and tortured until the psychological agony becomes so great that he smashes his own skull against the stone walls of his prison. One by one, the lights go out. The laughter of the military camp is replaced by the silence of the grave. By the time Caligula is a teenager, he is the sole survivor, the last candle burning in a house filled with ghosts. He is 19 years old when the summons arrives. Emperor Tiberius, the man who orchestrated the annihilation of his entire bloodline, wants the boy to join him. The location is Capri, a jagged island fortress rising from the Tyrrhenian Sea, a place of breathtaking beauty and unspeakable depravity. Tiberius has retreated here, transforming the island into a private sanctuary of paranoia and vice. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Tacitus describe Capri not as a palace, but as a theater of the grotesque. Here, the aging emperor indulges in lust so specific and cruel, they defy description, surrounded by astrologers, sycophants, and executioners. It is into this viper's nest that young Caligula must walk. Imagine the psychological pressure of that moment. You are 19. You are standing before the man who murdered your father, mother, and brothers. You know that he is watching your eyes, your hands, the corners of your mouth, looking for a single micro-expression of resentment. If you cry for your mother, you die. If you frown at a joke, you die. If you show a flicker of ambition, you are food for the fish at the bottom of the cliffs. So, Caligula does something remarkable. He hollows himself out. He learns to become a mirror, reflecting only what Tiberius wants to see. He suppresses every human instinct, every spark of grief, every urge for revenge. He laughs at the emperor's cruel jokes. He attends the torture sessions and watches with a placid smile. He becomes, in the words of the historians, the ultimate actor. Suetonius writes a chilling epitaph for this period of his life. There never was a better servant, nor a worse master. For 6 long years, Caligula survives in the belly of the beast, observing the mechanics of tyranny. He learns that power is not about laws or justice. It is about the absolute domination of the human spirit. He studies how Tiberius breaks men, how he uses fear as a sculptor uses clay. Then, in 37 AD, the waiting ends. Tiberius dies. The official story is natural causes, his old heart finally giving out. The whispered story, the one shared in the shadows, is that Caligula, or perhaps his ally Macro, smothered the old man with a pillow as he lay in bed, speeding up the inevitable. It does not matter. The nightmare of Tiberius is over. The 19-year-old hostage is now the master of the world. When Caligula enters Rome, the city erupts in a frenzy of joy. The people do not see the traumatized survivor Capri. They see the son of Germanicus. They see little boots. They sacrifice 160,000 animals in gratitude to the gods. They believe a golden age has dawned. For 7 months, it seems they are right. Caligula lowers taxes, recalls exiles, and throws lavish games. But the human mind is fragile, and the cracks in Caligula's psyche run deep. Sometime later that year, the emperor falls gravely ill. For weeks, he hovers between life and death, his body racked with fever, his mind wandering in delirium. The empire holds its breath. Crowds sleep outside the palace, praying for his recovery. Eventually, the fever breaks. Caligula opens his eyes. But the man who wakes up is not the man who went to sleep. Something in the crucible of that illness has shattered the final barrier between his trauma and his power. The mask he wore on Capri falls away, and underneath, there's only a void. What follows is not merely madness. It is a systematic dismantling of Roman society. Caligula does not just want to rule. He wants to expose the hypocrisy of the world that allowed his family to die. He begins to construct a machine of psychological warfare, a 5-act tragedy designed to humiliate, degrade, and destroy the very people who once cheered for him. This brings us to Act 1 of the Terror, the sister goddess. Caligula had 3 sisters, but Drusilla was his favorite. The ancient sources are rife with rumors of incest, suggesting a relationship that crossed every boundary of Roman morality. Whether these stories were true or merely the propaganda of his enemies is debated by historians, but Caligula certainly treated her with a devotion that bordered on obsession. When Drusilla dies suddenly, Caligula does not merely grieve. He weaponizes his grief. He forces the Senate to declare her a goddess, the first woman in Roman history to receive such honors. Temples are built, priests are appointed, but then comes a twist. He declares a period of mandatory public mourning that suspends all normal life. It becomes a capital crime to laugh. It is a capital crime to bathe. It is a capital crime to dine with your family. Imagine the atmosphere in Rome during those weeks. You are a shopkeeper, a soldier, a senator. You are walking down the street and you see a neighbor slip on the cobblestones. If a smile crosses your face and a spy sees it, you are dead. If you are caught heating water for a bath to wash the grime of the city from your skin, you are dead. Caligula enforces a regime where his personal emotional state is the law of the land. He is teaching Rome a lesson. You will feel what I feel. You will suffer as I suffer. By criminalizing happiness, he proves that he owns not just the bodies of his subjects, but their inner lives as well. Once he establishes that he can legislate emotion, he moves to Act 2, the Imperial brothel. This is perhaps the most calculated insult to the Roman aristocracy in the history of the empire. Caligula needs money, but more than that, he needs to humiliate the elite class that he secretly despises. He opens a brothel within the sanctity of the imperial palace. But he does not stock it with slaves or common prostitutes. He staffs it with the wives and daughters of Rome's highest nobility, the daughters of senators, the wives of generals, the matrons of ancient lineages. He sends heralds into the marketplace to announce the opening, shouting the prices to the common rabble. Consider the level of psychological destruction here. In Roman society, the honor of the family, the dignitas, is everything. A senator's reputation is his lifeblood. Caligula takes that reputation and sells it for copper coins. And to ensure the humiliation is permanent, he keeps ledgers, bureaucratic, detailed records of every transaction. This much for the wife of Senator X. This much for the daughter of General Y. If you are a nobleman, you are forced to send your daughter to the palace, knowing exactly what will happen to her, because refusing the emperor is treason. The ledger becomes a book of doom. He is not just violating women. He is dismantling the patriarchal structure of Rome. He strips them of their masculinity, their honor, and their legacy, all while balancing the books. But public humiliation is impersonal. Caligula craves the intimacy of fear. This leads to Act 3, the banquet predation. The setting is the Imperial dining hall, a room of marble columns, silken couches, and a heavy scent of roasted meats and expensive wine. The Senate is gathered for a feast. You are there with your wife. The air is thick with tension. The wine tastes like ash in your mouth. Suddenly, Caligula rises from his couch. The room goes deathly silent. The only sound is the rustle of his toga as he walks slowly among the tables. He moves like a wolf circling a flock of sheep. He stops at your table. He looks at your wife, not with passion, but with the cold, clinical eye of a slave trader. He lifts her chin. He inspects her teeth. He evaluates her body. Then, without a word to you, he takes her hand and leads her out of the room. You sit there. 50 of your colleagues are watching you. You stare at your plate. You grip your wine cup until your knuckles turn white, but you do not move. You cannot move. To stand up is death. To speak is death. You wait. 20 minutes pass. 30. Finally, the emperor returns. He brings your wife back to the table. She is disheveled, her eyes fixed on the floor, her spirit broken. But Caligula is not done. He reclines on his couch and, in a loud, conversational voice, begins to review her performance. He describes the encounter in graphic, clinical detail, comparing her to other wives, mocking her or praising her, stripping away the last shreds of her dignity in front of the entire Roman government. And the worst part? You have to smile. You have to nod. You have to applaud his wit. If you show anger, you are executed. If you show shame, you are executed. He forces you to be complicit in your own degradation. He makes you a witness to your own destruction. The horror escalates. Caligula realizes that while destroying a marriage is powerful, destroying the bond between parent and child is the ultimate violation. Act 4, the grieving father. The accounts of this period describe a city paralyzed by arbitrary executions. Caligula kills for boredom, for sport, for curiosity. But he develops a specific protocol for the executions of young men. If he orders a son to be killed, he forces a father to watch. Not from a distance, but from the front row. He wants to see the light go out in the father's eyes. Suetonius records a specific, harrowing incident that defines this cruelty. A wealthy Roman knight is forced to watch his son's execution in the morning. That same afternoon, a messenger arrives at the father's house. It is an invitation. The emperor requests his presence at dinner. The father arrives, his soul shattered, his son's blood likely still staining the execution ground. Caligula greets him warmly. He places the man next to him. He pours him wine. He offers him food. And then he watches. He stares at the father's face, searching for a tear, a quiver of the lip, a shadow of grief. He makes jokes and expects the father to laugh. Why does the father comply? Why does he eat the food and drink the wine? Because he has another son. And he knows that if he sheds a single tear for the dead one, the living one will be next. Caligula uses a father's love as a torture device. He forces a human being to deny their own humanity to save what remains of their family. It is a level of psychological sadism that goes beyond simple tyranny. It is an experiment in how much the human soul can endure before it snaps. But every machine has a flaw, and Caligula's flaw was arrogance. He believed he had broken everyone. He believed the Senate was gelded, the people were cowed, and the army was loyal. He forgot the most basic rule of survival. Do not corner a predator. This brings us to the final act, The wrong man, Cassius Chaerea, is a senior officer in the Praetorian Guard, the elite unit tasked with protecting the emperor's life. He is a career soldier, a man of violence, scarred and tough, but he has a high-pitched voice. To Caligula, this is hilarious. The emperor, who never served a day in the trenches, begins to relentlessly mock this veteran commander. Every day, when Chaerea comes to ask for the watchword, the military password for the day, Caligula gives him words like Venus or Priapus, accompanied by limp wrist gestures and obscene noises. He does this in front of the other soldiers. He turns a respected commander into a punchline. Day after day, week after week, Caligula thinks it is harmless fun. He thinks Chaerea is just another tool. But Chaerea is not a senator who can be shamed into silence. He is a man who kills for a living. And with every insult, every mocking password, Caligula is sharpening the knife that will end him. The emperor is so blinded by his own godhood that he fails to see the hatred burning in the eyes of the man standing directly behind him. The tension breaks on January 24th, 41 AD. It is the climax of the Palatine Games. Caligula is in high spirits, having spent the morning watching plays and performances. Around noon, he decides to return to the palace for a bath and lunch. Instead of taking the main route with his German bodyguards, he chooses a shortcut, a narrow, dim corridor known as a cryptoporticus. It is a fatal mistake. The conspirators are waiting. As the emperor enters a tunnel, the trap is sprung. Chaerea steps forward. Caligula, oblivious to the end, likely expects another moment of mockery, another chance to humiliate the soldier. Instead, Chaerea draws his sword. The ancient sources say he cried out, "Accipe hoc," take this, and drove the blade into Caligula's neck and shoulder. The emperor, stunned, tries to flee, but he is trapped in the stone throw of the corridor. Other conspirators swarm him. Sabinus, another tribune, stabs him in the chest. They descend upon him like a pack of wolves. Suetonius claims they stabbed him 30 times, including thrusts through his genitals. They hack at him until he is nothing more than a bloody ruin on the mosaic floor. The little boots that once ran to military camp are now still, soaking in a pool of imperial blood. But the horror does not end with Caligula's death. This is where the story reveals the true darkness of the system Caligula helped create. The machine is spinning out of control. The conspirators, fueled by adrenaline and bloodlust, race to the palace. They find Caesonia, Caligula's wife. She is not a politician. She is a mother. It does not matter. They hack her to death. Then they find the nursery. Julia Drusilla, Caligula's daughter, is barely a toddler. The soldiers do not hesitate. In a moment of brutality that defies comprehension, a soldier grabs a child by her feet and swings her head against a marble wall, shattering her skull. They want to erase the bloodline. They want to make sure no one is left to avenge the ghost of the monster. For a few chaotic hours, Rome teeters on the brink. The Senate gathers in the Temple of Jupiter, debating the restoration of the Republic. They speak of freedom, of ending the tyranny of Caesars forever. But while they talk, the Praetorian Guard is looting the palace. In the chaos, a soldier notices a pair of feet sticking out from behind a curtain. He pulls the fabric back and finds a trembling middle-aged man. It is Claudius, Caligula's uncle. Claudius is considered a family idiot, a man with a limp and a stutter, who survived the purges simply because no one thought him worth killing. The soldier looks at him and does not see a fool. He sees a payday. He sees an emperor. The guards hoist the terrified Claudius onto their shoulders and carry him to their camp. While the Senate debates liberty, the soldiers proclaim a new tyrant. The Republic is dead. The system survives. Caligula ruled for less than 4 years, a blink of an eye in the timeline of history. Yet, 2,000 years later, his name is still synonymous with madness. Why? Because Caligula revealed a terrifying truth about absolute power. He showed that the machinery of the state, the laws, the army, the bureaucracy, can be twisted into instruments of personal nightmare. He proved that if you control the fear of the people, you can make them do anything. You can make them worship your sister. You can make them prostitute their children. You can make them thank you for killing their sons. He was not just a madman. He was a mirror. He showed Rome exactly what had become. A society where survival was more important than honor, where men would accept any degradation to live one more day. The historian Suetonius said the documents and ledgers of Caligula were burned by Claudius to hide the names of the collaborators, to erase the shame of the Senate. But the stain remains. Caligula was a monster Rome created, the child of war who became the father of terror. And as we look back at the dark corridor where he fell, we have to ask ourselves, was Caligula the disease, or was he made one by the cruelty of others? If you believe that the darkest chapters of history must be preserved so they are never repeated, consider subscribing to the channel. We dig into the archives that others leave buried. Like the video to help us decode the algorithm, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Caligula was born a monster, or was he made one by the cruelty of others? Until next time, remember, the history books are written by the survivors, but the truth is often hidden in the silence of the dead.